Hello, and welcome back to the Live Label Free podcast. Well, my friends, we're just going to dive straight into today's topic because I know it's one that resonates with so many, and that is unnecessary calories. Now, this episode is dedicated to one of my amazing clients because, just like my recent episode on not knowing how much to eat, which I will link in the show notes if you have not yet listened, this topic of unnecessary calories has been swirling around in my mind for years. Yes, definitely years. But you know how sometimes you just need something to come up in conversation at precisely the right moment for you to then turn that thought into action? Well, that's what a recent message exchange did for me. So, to set the scene, I've been working with one of my clients on slowly increasing her intake, and, as it is for many people with anorexia, specifically butter is a huge fear food for her. Which again, it was for me too. Butter was right at the top of the list along with sugar, unless of course it was sugar from fruit or some other natural source that diet culture hasn't demonized, although to be fair, I'm pretty sure diet culture has found its way to demonize everything nowadays. I mean, one moment kale is the top superfood, and another moment, oh wow, study shows kale causes cancer. There is so much freaking noise out there, and especially for the autistic mind, my goodness, how overwhelming this can all be. Which, of course, is precisely where the eating disorder swoops in. Not only is it a manifestation of those autistic traits like literal thinking, masking through trying to conform and follow the herd, fear of judgment. I mean, I totally have to do an entire episode on rejection-sensitive dysphoria, which is basically the fancy term for all of us people-pleasers that have a visceral fear of people hating us. Yeah, I know the feeling, my friend. It is fucking hard. Anyways, circling back to our message exchange, me and this client have been peeling back the layers of her fear of butter. Because, as we all know, it's not actually about the butter, or even the fear of weight gain. It's about everything underneath that. It's about the fear of discomfort. I mean, weight gain made me want to crawl out of my skin. It's about the fear of fullness, and of course, even this has a deeper layer, because for me, I equated making peace with fullness as making peace with myself and making peace with this body, which was totally not okay because then everyone would think I'm fine, even though, because I'm an autistic person navigating a neurotypical world, I'm not fine. I'm fucking struggling. I still struggle a lot with, well, just life. And the eating disorder was a way for me to prove that struggle to myself and to the world at large. Which leads us into another underlying fear of weight gain, and that is the fear of being healthy. Now, I did do a whole podcast episode on this topic, which I will, of course, link in the show notes. So if you haven't listened to that episode, you can check that out. And there's also the fear of judgment we talked about, and specifically for this client, she has situational mutism. So for her, the eating disorder is a way to compensate for what she believes is a flaw. But I mean, even if you don't have situational mutism or another trait that society has pathologized, you probably resonate with the following statement. If I'm thin, my presence is quote-unquote tolerable, and thus, people won't have a reason to hate me. Well, obviously, there is so much to unpack here. All aspects I've been working on with this client that go beyond the scope of today's episode, but the reason I mention all of this is because it was the recent conversation we were having about butter that sparked me to create this episode. More specifically, we were reflecting on how she's doing with her current nutritional goals, and she told me she wasn't able to complete the full amount of butter. Now, traditional treatment, such as FBT and approaches that are taken in centers and clinics, and you know what I'm saying, they treat an individual's difficulty with completing food goals as being quote-unquote non-compliant and treatment resistant. But we don't do any of that here at Live Label Free. No, in my coaching practice, we invite curiosity. If a goal isn't being met, it's because the individual doesn't feel safe enough to take that step. So, my curiosity is rooted in, okay, why didn't you feel safe enough to take that step? Because when we know that, well, then we can continue being curious, and then we can ask, okay, what might need to change to make the situation or environment safe enough to take that step next time? Well, obviously, I don't phrase every question to every client exactly like that because my coaching approach is very intuitive and I want to use language that actually applies to the specific situation and also just get a better idea of how a specific client is feeling or experiencing that situation. So, in this case, I asked her, what was the thought that went through your head when you decided not to do the full amount of butter? And she replied, it's unnecessary calories. Again, I always want to be on the same page as my clients, so I asked her if she could define unnecessary calories for me. And honestly, her description was so poignant. And if you've listened to previous episodes of this podcast, yes, we are still obsessed with this word poignant, people. I mean, does anyone else ever just discover a word they haven't used for 15 years and then you just can't stop using it? Well, that's me and the word poignant right now. Anyways, her poignant description was this. In my mind, unnecessary calories are the calories from foods added to a meal that are not needed for the meal to taste good. They don't provide anything to the meal besides energy. Necessary calories are the calories from foods that provide nutrients and or are needed to make a meal taste good. Oh my gosh, again, so much to unpack here. So let's start with my lived experience. I mean, I totally resonate with her entire description, and what immediately comes to mind is this idea that quote-unquote unnecessary calories extend way beyond food. If I felt that activities weren't productive, well, then they were a quote-unquote waste of time. In other words, when I used the term unnecessary calories, I was, in essence, applying the same logic to energy consumption that I applied to time. Just as I feared wasting calories on unnecessary foods, I feared wasting my energy on unnecessary activities. Both fears stem from the same scarcity mindset, this deep-rooted belief that there's never enough to go around, and thus, everything we do needs to be justified and optimized. So where the heck am I even going with all of this? Well, naturally, I am me, and if you know me from listening to previous podcasts, you know I am very philosophical. I think deeply about everything, constantly wondering what's below the surface. Which means we can now transition into my favorite part of this conversation, which is the philosophical element. Because arguably, nothing is necessary or productive, which could also make everything necessary or productive. But Livia, how can these two things coexist? Well, they can coexist because these words, these labels, necessary, unnecessary, productive, unproductive, they are all subjective stories. There is no absolute truth defining what is necessary or unnecessary, and even if there was, well, we as humans could never know it because we as humans are, by definition, subjective beings. And me, being an autistic human, or rather an autistic being that feels trapped in a human costume, I have always been plagued by this knowledge that I can never know. Which Socrates said so well, right? To know is to know you know nothing. And when you have this awareness that you will never be able to know, well, this can be so overwhelming. So instead, what we do to protect ourselves from this overwhelm is we pretend to know. In other words, we tell ourselves the story, often unconsciously, that we know. I mean, this is why I love the acronym of FEAR, so capital F-E-A-R, being false evidence appearing real. I love this acronym so freaking much because that's all fear is, right? It's a story we tell ourselves. It's a way to convince ourselves that we have, quote unquote, evidence of something that's literally just a construct of our minds. When we pretend to know something, what we're actually doing is we're placing judgment on it. We're slapping a label on it. This food has unnecessary calories. This activity is unproductive. These aren't absolute truths. I mean, how could they be? What one person claims is absolutely necessary or productive might be the complete opposite for someone else. So I know we are really going down deep into this tunnel of nuance here, so I'd like to move into something more practical. If you're struggling with this concept of necessary and unnecessary, productive and unproductive, well, what can you do to start moving into the space of a colorful existence? What can you do to start taking steps towards a life that is in alignment with your authentic values? Well, I believe the key lies in living label-free. That is to say, removing judgment and being relentlessly curious and open to discovery. What does this look like in practice? Well, the first step to living label-free, and particularly relevant to today's topic, is to acknowledge that labels are made up. They're societal constructs. They are not facts. Once you establish that these labels, including unnecessary and unproductive and all the other formations of those words, once you establish that these are made up, well, then you can start to be curious about what story you want to start writing instead. Do you think about food all the time? Perhaps you constantly look at what others are eating and compare your intake to theirs. Or maybe you know that what you're experiencing is called mental hunger, except you don't feel that your mental hunger is valid. If so, you are not alone, my friend. For years, I was consumed by food thoughts. My entire life revolved around when, what, where, and how I was going to eat. I secretly wanted others to eat more so that I felt I could eat more, and I would equally become upset when others ate less because I believed I would then have to eat less too. If I had any appointments or events that involved food, I would spend days, if not weeks, ruminating on how I would quote unquote balance my intake and create a buffer to ensure I didn't go over my planned amounts. If you resonate with any of that, I don't think I have to tell you that thinking about food 24/7 is absolutely exhausting. Not only does it steal your precious brain space, but being obsessed with food steals your life away. If you want to gain your life back, or rather discover a new one so you can finally experience the peace and mental calm that comes with being fully recovered, my course, Extremely Hungry to Completely Satisfied, is here to help. Extremely Hungry to Completely Satisfied is a self-paced virtual online program that guides you through every step you need to take to go from being obsessed with food to living a life of freedom. It contains 8 modules that dive deep into topics including how to recognize different types of hunger, how to differentiate mental hunger from emotional eating, how you should eat to stop binging, tips for coping with weight gain, information on weight overshoot and when you'll reach your natural set point weight, how to heal digestive issues, what it takes to balance your hormones, and so much more. Everything I've ever been asked about overcoming extreme hunger, you'll find it in my course. Enroll in Extremely Hungry to Completely Satisfied today by visiting the link livelabelfree.com/course. So that's livelabelfree.com/course. I cannot wait for you to embark on your journey to freedom. And now, let's get back to today's episode. This leads us into the second step, which is claiming the permission to explore your wants and desires. Now, I can't help but get philosophical again because, oh my, it's these wants and desires that we don't want to be confronted with. The underlying fear of the eating disorder is the existential fear, the fear that your authentic wants and desires are quote-unquote wrong. It's so much safer to convince ourselves we need to do something rather than admit we want something else. We tell ourselves the story that we need the eating disorder, that it's necessary to feel safe, to cope, to survive this overwhelming world. To question the story of the eating disorder means confronting the terrifying prospect of there being another way to exist. But because we can't yet see what that way looks like, we pretend that the eating disorder is the only way forward. And we are able to trick ourselves into this story being a reality by drowning ourselves in labels. Necessary, unnecessary, productive, unproductive, healthy, unhealthy, good, bad, the list goes on. Now, I'm going to be real honest with you in saying that I still struggle a lot with this concept of productivity. I mean, just last night, I had written quite a decent chunk of a chapter of the book I'm currently working on, and if you want to know what this book is, be sure to listen to my latest spontaneous update episode in which I talk about all of that. Anyways, so last night I was working on this book, and I hit a tipping point where I went from hyper-focus mode into full-on exhaustion. I knew my brain was done for the day, and yet I felt this intense guilt for stopping. I considered watching some Netflix or reading the fiction book I've had on my iPad for months now, but keep telling myself I don't have time for. And yet it just felt viscerally wrong to let myself indulge in the pleasure of reading a fiction novel or watching Netflix or just doing something for me. And it's in these moments that I remember something my book editor, shout out to Barbie Hallaby, what she said to me when we met for coffee a few months ago. And she said, sometimes the most necessary work happens when we're doing the unnecessary work. So what the heck does this even mean? Well, for my identity as a writer, some of my most creative insights come to me the moment I step away from the laptop. In fact, my upcoming book, How to Get Out of Quasi-Recovery, is one that I nearly wrote the entire thing frantically typing into my Notes app on my iPhone on my walks amongst the palm trees in LA last year. I'm not even kidding you. That being said, I think there are so many things we, again, consciously or unconsciously, label as unnecessary. So maybe it's watching a movie, reading a fiction book, taking a bath, spending money on yourself. Oh my god, I have to do an entire episode on difficulty with spending money because I think this is inherently, tied to disordered eating. But when you add the autism component to that, like, oh my gosh, I'm not even gonna go there right now. I'm gonna do a whole episode. Anyways, all of these things, you could say they're unnecessary for survival. But the real question is, are they unnecessary for a meaningful life, for joy, for connection, for all the other intangible things that actually matter? The same thing goes for food, because technically I could eat stale, tasteless food for the rest of my life. This would be, quote-unquote, necessary for my survival, and indulging in a brownie or taking the time to make myself a nourishing smoothie or what have you, these could be, quote-unquote, unnecessary pleasures. But my friend, what is the point of life if you've already decided not to enjoy it? What's the point of life if you're constantly chasing a made-up story that isn't serving you? To conclude this episode, I believe the real question isn't whether something is necessary or unnecessary. It's not about whether you need it or not. Rather, it's about asking yourself, are you willing to discover another way? A way where the quote-unquote unnecessary activities might just be the most necessary of all when it comes to living a meaningful life. And that is all I have for you today, my friend. If you are willing to discover another way and you'd like my help on that journey, I am super excited to share that after many months of taking a break to focus on my other projects, one-on-one coaching spots are officially open. I've made some significant changes, including expanding my coaching team, and with the Autistically ED-free membership up and running, all of my one-on-one coaching programs now include free access to the Autistically ED-free community for support in between sessions. This doesn't only mean connection with me and support from me, but this also means you'll have 24/7 access to a community in which you can connect with other individuals who are on this journey with you to ask questions, share struggles, and celebrate wins. So whether you're an individual who's sick and tired of the eating disorder rules and you are ready to make lasting changes, or maybe you're a parent who wants to support a loved one find freedom in a neurodiversity affirming way, whoever you are, I invite you to apply for one-on-one coaching today at livelabelfree.com/coaching. So that's livelabelfree.com/coaching. And of course, if you have any questions for me about coaching, do contact me at livelabelfree.com/contact. There is nothing I love more than seeing people grow and align their actions with their authentic values. I hope to guide you in real time on that journey, and otherwise, I'll talk to you in the next episode. Bye-bye for now.